in this video we're going to do all of the sensors on the car. So all the stuff that goes onto the block for the most part. The only two sensors we're not going to do is the O2 sensor that goes to the manifold. We'll do that when we build it on the subframe, and the speed sensor that goes on the transmission. So we'll do that also when it's on the subframe. So I kind of just showing you here, I've got the old sensor sitting here. Cam sensor, our knock sensors, oil pressure sensor, knock sensor, crank sensor, and then I've got the new ones over here. So all of these parts are mostly, they're all either Delphi or they're AC Delco or GM genuine. Over here I got the oil level sensor, and then that's the crank sensor. And what I did was I just put a little thing of black RTV on the ones that are going directly into the block that oil can get through. Just because the only thing stopping that oil from getting through and getting all over the block is that O-ring, and I really do not want oil leaks anywhere. Even over a long period of time, I don't want any, like, you know, some of it slowly seeping out and getting the motor dirty. I absolutely hate that. And there's not much that stopped these from leaking other than that one O-ring. So I just put a little bead of 30-minute Permatex black RTV just around the sensor there. So just on a couple. I'll probably do it a little bit on this one too for that. So yeah, anyways, we're gonna go ahead and do that. We're gonna start with the cam sensor and get it put in. All right, so I'm gonna start here with the cam sensor. I did clean out this hole with some brake clean so that it was just the aluminum surface and nothing painted. I'm just going to put a little bit of oil on the inside of this just so it slips in kind of easy. Put a little bit on the O-ring too. Just like that. Boom, there we go. Perfect. And then I got these bolts, like I was saying, from an online, like LS4, like stainless steel kit. And I found one of these bolts. It was kind of small. I don't remember what it was for, but it was for something I wasn't going to use. So I found that it fit in here perfectly. So going to go ahead and use this to tighten down that bracket. Alright, so next up we're going to do the crank sensor. Again, same thing, I put a little Permatex underneath there. The other thing too is, with this one you have to put this in first before that harness section, because the clip to plug in the male end blocks the bolt head. And again, here's the old bolt. So we zip tied it to it when we bagged it in the sensor bag. So I just cut the zip tie off of that guy, and then we got that. So this goes on the, essentially this would, if this was in a front wheel drive, if you were viewing it from that angle, it would essentially be the passenger side. But obviously since this is a front wheel drive car, technically this sensor is on the towards the inside of the car. So this is towards the firewall, this side of the engine. So go ahead and pop this in there and just kind of give it a little click, just like that. So 10 mil. Hopefully it'll help it. Okay, so next up again is the knock sensor. So on the car, the knock sensor on this side, there's one on each side. This side is connected to the wiring harness that connects the crank sensor together to the one pin that's coming off of that. So essentially I'm just going to go ahead and plug that guy in. And then I did put the new knock sensor on this clip. So basically you take the little plastic thingies off, and then push down, pull it out, swap it out. And the knock sensors, these are GM genuine. These did come with bolts already in them, so it's kind of perfect. Didn't have to worry about that. I do also have the reference photos on the iPad to kind of show me the orientation. Again, another good reason why I want to do the videos, because I can see the orientation quickly in the videos. I just took screenshots when I watched the first video teardown. That way, just for reference, I could see them. And, you know, just make sure that it wasn't facing the wrong way or whatever. So, in the photos I took when I pulled it out of the car, this is exactly the orientation it went. So, you know, because you could put this down or possibly, you know, the other way or something. It wouldn't make sense to do it since this one's plugged in here, but just to triple check everything is correct. And there you go. Alright, we got knock sensor number 2 on the other side of the engine, just on this flat piece right here. I cleaned it off with some acetone so that there was no paint on this. So when I looked in the reference photo, this sensor is kind of facing kind of down at an angle like this. So, and if you look, there's a little notch that none of these other ridges have on this. So it goes just like that. You can kind of let it bottom out and then tighten it down. It'll tighten down and it won't move that way. So I just looked at the video real quick from the disassembly and saw that. So there you go. Perfect. Alright, so next up is going to be the oil level sensor. So this is already cleaned out in here. I'm going to lube the O-ring up a little bit just so it has something in there. And for this one, because it was so nasty, I put the bolts and the sensor in a bag together. And then I threw all those in a gallon bag that basically said, and the base said sensors. You can see there that bad boy's pretty dirty, so I'm just going to wipe that clean a little bit before I put it in. This guy only goes one direction, obviously. I lubed it up a little bit there and in there. I'm just going to stick this guy in. Perfect. There we go. Next, we're going to do the coolant temp sensor. Again, I believe this is AC Delco or Genuine GM. It's one of the two. It's got a little bit of the thread sealant on there, and then it's got the crush washer on it. So this goes on the, essentially it's going to be the side facing you when you open the hood. If this was a front wheel drive car, you'd call it the driver's side. So pretty simple. It's going to be the hole right next to the small hole on the head itself. And just going to thread it in. This is a 19 millimeter. So and I'm just going to try to make sure I keep it away off of that head because it's painted. And there we go. There's that. Just to get a little bit more. Just to. All right, perfect. Just wanted to get it straight. All right, coolant temp sensor is good. And then up next, we will probably move on to the oil pressure sensor. All right, so real quick, we're going to go ahead and do the oil pressure sensor. Probably one of the more important sensors in here. This is the original screen. Normally on the old one it went in there and fit, and then you just put this over top. Problem is, with this Summit flat cover, this oil screen doesn't go down far enough to let this screw in. It only can get like one thread on there. So I posted on LS4 Nation, and from kind of what I saw, most everybody was saying the screen's pretty useless. You don't need it, leave it out. Somebody also said that they had looked it up and said that the screen was essentially there because to not allow any debris to go into the DOD cylinders and plug them up, or DOD channels and plug them up in the solenoids. So we're going to leave it out because it doesn't fit anyways, and I can't really think of a way to make it fit. It needs quite a bit of shortening to make it fit. I could maybe cut the tabs off on both sides because it sticks up a little bit on both. It's got little nubs on top and bottom, but we're going to leave it out for now. So we're just going to install this. Everybody's telling me it should be fine. So this is an AC Delco. So this is a factory kind of, you know, name brand OEM style sensor. So it's got the thread sealant on there, and then it's got the crush washer. So pretty straightforward. I'm just going to screw it in. And I don't have a socket that'll fit this, so we're just going to use an adjustable wrench. Just until it bottoms out. And I'll leave the cap on for now on the sensor until we actually go to install it. Plug it in. Alright, there we go. So that's installed. Just kind of hand tight. Should be good. And there we go. And that's all the sensors installed on it. So now we'll move on to the accessory drive. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and install the harmonic balancer. Essentially what I have is I stuck the old bolt in, and I have some of the ARP assembly lubricant, the ultra high torque, so for bolts, so that I don't tear my threads out. I've got a bolt sticking out of I've got a long bolt that I threaded in sticking out of the back of the where the flywheel bolts in, and it's sticking out past the brace on the engine stand, so it's hitting that so it can't turn over. And essentially I'm just kind of hand screwing it on there. So this is the Dorman one, so I believe I have a 24 mil on this. It's not the perfect size, but it's pretty close. So yeah, I'm essentially just kind of hand screwing it on there. So alright, so it bottomed out. I'm just going to try to take this bolt out and just see what it looks like. Alright, man, it really ate the inside of that guy up, but I guess it's not too bad. Alright, so I got that. Alright, so there you go. I cleaned these I cleaned this out a little bit. These are a little tough, these cars, because it's a very unique kind of odd balancer in the fact that it's so thin. I believe it's also the only balancer in the LS entire family generation that only has basically it's one belt for everything. So it makes the LS puller tools and install tools a little tricky. So, because it makes a lot of sense just to throw I mean, obviously, it makes a good amount of sense just to throw the bolt on and sink it in there. You get a good amount of threads in, even all the way off, which isn't too bad. Again, I used the ARP lubricant for the threads so that we wouldn't tear out any threads or any issues like that. I just hand oiled the inside of the bore of this balancer and then the actual crank snout itself. just a little thin amount of oil just to give it some lubrication to slip on there. And again, we use the old bolt to do that, so not too bad. It did damage some of the grooves in the inside of this here. You can see that a little bit. I don't think that's going to be detrimental. It's pretty clean on the inside of that lip and on the outside of that, so I just cleaned it up. I did put some ARP lubricant too inside of this and on the bottom of the head of the underside of the head of the bolt, just to give it some lubrication so it wasn't totally dry underneath that. Kind of like if you were doing an ARP bolt. So I think for now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stick this guy in here. I do have an impact. I don't have a big boy, but I've got this guy. I'm just going to send it in, tighten it up a little bit so that it's at least tight. And then we will shortly we'll go ahead and actually give it a good torque spec on there, and with the torque wrench. I'll probably use my click torque wrench. But it's tough because you can't put a bar through this to stop the harmonic balancer from moving because it's such an odd balancer. You don't have any way to do that. The only way you can really stop it from moving is by sticking a bolt in the back of the snout where the flywheel would go and pinning it against the brace of the motor stand so that it can't spin. But what I found was my bolt actually just bent, and that was a pretty damn strong bolt. So alright, so up next is going to be the water manifold, and I do have some Felpro gaskets here, so rubber impregnated with the metal. So got a couple of those for right here for the water jackets. And again, an LS4 is weird because it has this whole ass water manifold thing instead of just a water pump, to essentially move a lot of the accessory stuff over here and out of the way, move the pump over, shorten up its length overall for the engine so it can fit front wheel drive and clear the basically the strut tower areas. So anyways, there we go. And again, I have that LS1 kit that had the stainless steel bolts. So the 3 bolts here, 3 bolts there are essentially going to be the stainless steel kit. I put just a little bit of ultra torque on there as well, because I am going to fasten these down pretty good. I couldn't find, I was having a hard time finding the torque spec on this. I think it's 22 foot-pounds, so we're going to try that. But essentially, first thing we're going to do is 3 here, 3 there. So those 3 is where it goes in. So I'm just going to stick my first one in there. And again, I did repaint all of this metallic silver. It's the engine enamel from Rust-Oleum. It's kind of like a cast aluminum color. It's got a little sparkle in it. Super sick. And boom, that guy's going to go just like that. So so I got those 2 started. Now what I'm going to do is get these 2. Just going to kind of slip this in. Alright, so I got 1 in there, the gasket on it, a couple of these. Screw them in a little bit. Let's see if I can get this one lined up with the gasket. Yes, I can. I will tell you guys, I messed up on the water manifold a while back. And essentially, what I did was, I dropped it when I was painting it. And the edge of the inside of the flat portion of this water jacket, the actual manifold itself, kind of got, the very corner of it got bent. Shouldn't be that big of a deal. And I don't think it's going to be, but I was a little worried about it. So essentially what I did was I took my Mike 6 flat aluminum block and I sanded it a little bit just to bring it down a little bit to even it out. Because it did push up past the very edge, pushed up past the surface height a little bit, so I just pulled it down a little bit. Well, in doing that, this edge on this, basically this bolt right here, there's a little gap in here. If you mock us up and tighten it up, there's a little tiny, like, couple paper thin gap here. Now, obviously, now we have a gasket in between it. It shouldn't be a big deal, but basically what I'm saying is I took a little too much off of this. I tried to sand them all at the same time, so I was hitting this side and this side with my block, so it wasn't just doing just this corner when I was trying to fix it, but there's still just a little gap. I don't know if it was like that from the factory. It very well might have been. It might have been me. I'm not entirely sure. I think it was probably a little bit me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten this one up first and then go to these. Because I just really want to make sure that this one is as secure as possible and as tight as possible before I get to these. I'll tighten these a little bit, but not, I'll torque these first and then go to here. Normally I'd go in some sort of an X pattern. Not going to do that because of these specific circumstances. I think it'll be fine. I don't think it's going to be a big deal doing that. So if you see me doing that, well, that's why. Just kind of breaking the rules a little bit because of that.
He would probably have said, like, this is my favorite band about maybe multiple bands, and I'm sure Depeche Mode was definitely this is my favorite band. Yeah. I love Depeche Mode. I feel like Depeche Mode has this particularly strong influence on Lost. I really hear the Depeche Mode as well. Influence.
I hear that. I can actually, I'm glad that you talked about Chester in relation to Depeche Mode and that he played an essential role in that. Because once I figured it out, and I heard it, I couldn't unhear Dave and Chester and the similarities in the way that they are emoting. They sing different.
Alright, so up next I'm going to go ahead and put the stud in for the alternator bracket. So I'm just going to screw that in until it bottoms out. I'm going to try and slide the alternator bracket on. Which I believe goes like this.
Like when the songs and the concept of the album started to, not album, but the started this.
Okay, real quick. So we're gonna put in the rest of the water manifold bolts, and if you remember, we colored the top of them so we would know that where they would go, and then we took our reference photo here. So I'll show you. So in the reference photo, kind of hard to see, but I know that the purple bolt is there, and I know where the red bolt is from the photo, and the other red bolt. So I'm just using my reference photos here, and I know that the purple bolt goes right here to the right of the triple bolts. So I'm going to screw that guy in. I know one of the red bolts goes right there. And then I know that the other red bolt goes there. And then we'll take a little acetone, a brake clean, and we'll clean the tops of those so they don't have anything on there.
Started to uncover the
these are going to be 15 mil.
And one of the great things about it was we made a point starting mid-hybrid theory because of some of the things people were saying. Right?
Well, it sounded reactive to me. Like, we'll show you.
Well, they just don't know. Like, it's the only problem is that they don't know. So let's show them, let's help them know. And so we brought our Dave's like childhood friend Mark out on the road with us. Yeah. He was like filming everything. We were capturing more stuff.
I mean, musicians are called artists.
All right, so we got the stud on there. I got the stud in there, slid that guy on.
They say, like, I'm gonna go see a band.
Use my reference photos again. It's going to be 3 bolts. So essentially,
you don't always have a very clear, like, not all musicians are artists, right?
Screw thread that in there.
Like a 3-dimensional.
And this actually is a LS4 King shaved. It's a shaved alternator bracket. I bought it from him. My original one is up there on the shelf. So in the future, if I want to do the bigger intake, which I will, it's up there, I'll be able to do that without having to mess with the alternator bracket. So that'll be kind of cool. So there is that. It is shaved. I believe it came off of one of his builds that he had done. I think it was on his 8-second car or whatever. So I saw him posting it one day, and I was like, wanting to get my hands on one anyways. And I was like, well, I think he had listed for 70 bucks. So I bought it off him. It was already shaved. It was already painted. I repainted it, but essentially it was good to go already. Alright, so pulley time. So I went in and hit these guys at 40. So those should be good. I'll look up some specs later on this to see if I can find anything specific. You're starting to get into slightly less critical, critical bolts here to make sure the torque specs are right. 40 seems to be pretty decent, clicked really good, so it's good tightness, I think. But we're getting into the pulleys now. So again, this is a great place where the reference photos that we took, and again, I just snapshotted the first video, put this in a drive, and I can see, hey, which pulleys go where. This was also a really hard part of the build for me because I kept going back and forth trying to find pulleys that were name brand, because I didn't want fake pulleys or shitty pulleys that would, last a month and start whistling and howling and making noises. But essentially, I actually found it really hard to find these pulleys the exact same part number. Guys that are into motors and build LSs all the time, it may be very well, they're like, well, whatever, it's just this pulley for everything, and they didn't need to do it. For me, I was going off of pure part numbers. If I didn't have the part number exactly and then see it listed on a reputable place, I wasn't really going to buy it. So I got a couple pulleys that are essentially AC Delco or some name brand. I think they're AC Delco. Essentially, I did the best that I could. Screw this guy in. Starting to look like something now, kind of, and it's bigger than a 15. What is it, 17? Yeah. So for whatever reason, that one's 17. All right, so this one here goes on the lower water manifold on the lower end. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I got the water pump, and this is an AC Delco water pump for this car. Comes with this kind of paper and rubber gasket kind of hybrid thing. I don't love that that's all that's protecting it. I cannot find a metal gasket for it. I don't think that they make one for this car. Normally I wouldn't use a gasket maker if it had a metal with rubber impregnated gasket, but since it's this kind of hybrid kind of cork / rubber gasket, I'm going to use some Permatex water pump and thermostat housing gasket maker. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean the insides of this with I just got a little kind of brake clean. So just kind of spread it around on both sides. We'll take a glove, kind of like you'd wipe a caulk joint, and just kind of smooth out. All right. So it's been like maybe 5 minutes or so. It's getting a little tacky. So what I'm going to do is, we got the gasket lining up with the notch on the pump. Lines up with this notch right here. It's a little tricky. I'm going to get a bolt ready. Unless it falls out of my socket. I'm just going to point the hole in the direction of the nub. So I know I got it on the nub. Then I'm going to turn it, hold it with my hand, and see if I can get a bolt started. It's a little bit tricky. All right, so we got all the bolts in there. Again, just kind of a little star pattern. Just gonna hand tighten it, so it's a little bit snug. I'm gonna leave it like that for about an hour from now, 7:38, so about 8:30. I'm gonna then torque it to spec, and that'll be done. I want to show you guys what I did on the power steering pump. Essentially, it's a new pump. The pulley itself is reused. So what I did with the pulley is I kind of just scuffed it up really good. It wasn't too rusted, and I just used some engine paint and I painted it black. I got it in the grooves too, so it looks pretty good. Now, as far as getting it onto the pump itself, what I did was, I believe this is a 3/8 threaded bolt. It's pretty long. I got a whole shitload of washers for it, and essentially I threaded this into there. Now, I'll kind of explain something in a second. I threaded this in, had a whole bunch of washers on it. I think it was, no, it actually was this one. I had like that many washers on. I had a lot. It's threaded all the way in. And then I essentially just used my impact. Now again, I put that high torque, that ARP high torque goo on my threads, so that when I was sending it with an impact gun, it wouldn't rip the threads out too bad on the inside of this pump. So it gave it some, you know, gave it some lubrication, as it was like really under a lot of tension in there, to not rip the threads out or cross thread it or do a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's essentially how I got it on. I took it off several times to check it. Sometimes I'd put, you know, more washers on or whatever, until I felt it basically, I was hammering it down onto there and it bottomed out. And then I took it off, and then I saw, okay, perfect. It's completely flush with the snout of the pump. So that's kind of what that is. I have it mounted on there right now just because I wanted to, you know, put the pulley on with it sitting in the car. So now, as far as the actual pulleys themselves go, I'll kind of walk you through this. Got a new alternator. Got that in Rock Auto. Got mostly all this on Rock Auto. Some of it was AC Delco, some of it wasn't. So this here, this pulley is AC Delco. So that one goes right there, right underneath the reservoir. The other one, the two that I cannot find AC Delco branded, at least I couldn't, at least with the part numbers I was working with, is the one directly below the alternator and the one directly below the power steering pump. So these two are the same pulley, essentially. They're basically interchangeable. So since you got that pulley, you got that pulley, you got that pulley, you got your water pump. Again, this is AC Delco, the 6-rib pulley over here. So that's AC Delco. Right now, this is the old original AC compressor. I just threw this in there with some shitty bolts. just to make sure that the fitment with the belt worked and all that stuff with this and everything. So I've already put the belt on several times. And then the tensioner pulley, I know I should probably get a new tensioner pulley, or tensioner bracket. For now, I'm gonna rock what I got. This one as well is just kind of a cheapo. I don't remember what it is, Denso or something like that. I can't remember who made this one. Couldn't find this either. Name brand. And then the harmonic balancer is a Dorman. So essentially that's it. I got my alternator bracket powder coated. That's the one from LS4 King. So it is shaved. As you can see, for when we do an intake swap down the road, it's shaved to fit that, so that's pretty cool. The alternator is nothing special. Essentially that's it. What I've been using to actually do the tensioner is my long 1/2-inch breaker bar. I just stick it right in there, which you can do when it's out of the car. And then I just push it down, stick the belt on. I rolled it over a couple times with the spark plugs out to make sure that these are all in line properly and that this is on enough and everything kind of fits good. So I went ahead and obviously saw the video, threw the new gaskets in. They do kind of stick out and go in the grooves. You can also see the actual injectors. And it's a good way to double check. You see they're all equally put in there. So essentially, you're gonna line, I like to line one side of this up on the dowel, and boom. I'm gonna show you guys a couple things that I did for the intake here. Josh from the future here. So basically, essentially what I did was when I went to put the intake bolts on, I couldn't get them to essentially click at the right foot pound. So it's 89 inch-pounds for these intake bolts. I had a set in my LS kit for the stainless steel ones. I also had the old ones. Pretty much everything I used. I even bought some, and again, these are all M6 by, I believe, 100. This is a stud I got on Amazon. It's stainless steel M6 by 140 millimeters. So that essentially clears that much. And then I just bought the right bolts for that. So what I did was this, because they were spinning, they weren't fully stripped, but they just weren't tightening all the way down to 89 inch-pounds. Essentially what I did is I bought these studs, and I put blue thread locker in the base of them, and I threaded these in by hand. And then I let them sit there overnight. And then I got some, essentially some torque grease. I did the ARP high torque stuff. that I use for the other things. And I put it under the bolt, and I kind of smeared it all over the top of this head, and then I screwed the bolt on. So they sat overnight so that they would stiffen up, screwed in. And then I used the torque goo, put the bolts on, and essentially with that was able to tighten from the top so that these weren't spinning. And I was able to get 89 inch-pounds. So we essentially changed it from bolts to studs. And I hit the torque spec, went in a cross pattern for all these. Not a super big deal. But I just wanted to make sure it was right and kind of be thorough about it. So that's what I did for that. For the tops of these kind of nubs that normally have the hanger nubs on there for the cover to go over top, I just took those out. I unscrewed them. And then exact same thing, I took that M6 bolt kit that I had, and I did M6 by 1 in each of these where the nubs were, just to clean it up a little bit. It looks a little more tidy that way. So yeah, that's what I did. As far as the gaskets themselves go, I just put a little bit of Armor All actually on the inside of the gasket. I believe that's what I used. Some sort of like dressing, just a little bit on the gasket so that it would seat flat and have a little bit of just a little bit of lubrication when it actually cinched down on the heads themselves. So I just did a little bit on each gasket, set it down, and then did the torque spec on the actual studs that we ended up putting in here. So this section is all done. This is good to go. It's not coming off again. It shouldn't be. As far as the throttle body, these are also M6 bolts on this, but they're kind of big. They're like M6 by 2, and I didn't have a long enough M6 bolt. I may in the future just buy another kit and just get in some M6 by 2 and then swap these out for these same stainless steel ones so they just look good. But for now, this will be fine. I essentially just painted this whole throttle body, taped it off, and painted it the same way. Velcro gasket in there for the throttle body gasket, so that's good to go. I did these. I got on Amazon. I got these Steamport crossover block off with new gaskets underneath. They're Velcro gaskets, and then just the ports themselves for blocking that off. Just an Allen head. So I did that in both of those. So those look good. And then obviously these are good to go, these injectors. Got the Steamport hooked up over here. Again, I took the old one and essentially grounded it down and painted the whole bar and everything. Cleaned the tube up, and then I used just some hose clamps, to some small ones, a little kit from Harbor Freight, to secure that down. So yep, that's pretty much the story on that. So we got the whole intake, we got the steam ports all done for that, the injectors are in, so that's all good to go. As far as my power steering fluid reservoir, essentially all I did with this guy is I just took it in the bathtub, scrubbed the hell out of it, washed it off, did a little Armor All treatment on it. You know, nothing, not Armor All, but I detail cars, so it's some sort of a coating. I forget what the dressing is, but something for the plastics just to make it look nice. Other than that, nothing else. Took the original clamps off of both of these. I find with putting this on, what's actually easy to do is just take your cap for your power steering pump, and I bought a hose clamp kit right here from Harbor Freight. Good to have it handy for doing a project like this. And got this one here, kind of fits good. Opened it up just a little bit more, and I'm just gonna slip it over. So kind of like that, so that they're both kind of facing out. Now what I found is kind of easy way to do this is easy-ish. It's kind of still a real tight fit to do this without taking the pump off. Is actually just sliding the pump, sliding the inlet right on. It's kind of as far as you can. Just like that. And then I bend it over. It's a tight flex, be careful. There we go. Bend it over. Boom, just like that. So I want to show you a little something I did. Basically what I did with this one is the bottom clamp, I just kind of pushed it back a little bit because I can get it from down here at this angle. So other thing I did too is I pulled this hose out of that a little bit and then push this down so this is straight. You want this to be straight on this. It can be cocked a little bit if you have this hose too high up on there. So I just got a screwdriver, pushed it down a little bit while I was working this, and then it got straightened out completely. So that's pretty much right there how that goes. Just made a quick mark with a red Sharpie where it was screwed in at. So I'm going to take my cutting disc and just lob that material off, probably right in the middle where that red mark is, and then screw it in. So I want to show you guys really quick. Here's my coil pack bracket and coil packs. Bracket, I basically got sandblasted and I painted it myself, the same silver color that we painted all this stuff with. It's just the Rust-Oleum enamel cast aluminum color. So I painted that, just hung it up and just rattle can painted that. I got the ZZP coil packs from the ZZP website. I think when I bought them they were like $150. They're a lot more now. I've heard some good and bad about these coil packs. I've heard some batches are bad, some are fine. Most people say that they're fine. Some people have horror stories about them. We'll see. Coil packs are pretty easy to switch out if something goes wrong with them, but I'm going to try them out because they match the engine color. And for the most part, CZP is pretty reputable. Now, one thing you do got to keep in mind is this metal coil pack here, for the actual wiring harness itself, it clips onto the back. I'll show you this really quick. I'm just going to mock this up so you guys can see it, but basically the actual coil plugs just snap on with a clip. They just go pop pop on each side of the bracket on the back. And this plug right here, you actually have to take this off. You push it behind through here so that the plug is sticking out here, and then you put the pack back on so the wire is kind of hidden, sneaks behind that. So that's kind of how you do it. Then you mount it. But I just want to show you guys kind of what it looks like, what I'm thinking here. We'll take this back off obviously and do all that, but you can put the coil pack on there, and it's hard to do this with one hand. There you go. So you can actually set it there and it kind of sits into a groove. And again, M6x1 bolts are going to basically be what I'm using to secure it so that it has a nice clean look. So highly recommend getting some M6 and M8 bolts, even if it's just M6x1, M8x1, because you can use them for a lot of stuff. The bolts for the coil packs themselves came from that LS bolt kit. The same bolt kit I've basically been using on the entire engine, minus, like I said, things like this. It did come with these as well, but I thought it'd be cool just to use some kind of flat stainless steel ones. Just thought it'd be super clean. So 10 mils for these guys. Boom. 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 Now, as far as the wires go, I was gonna reuse the heat shields I had for the spark plugs, but these were $10 on Amazon, so I just picked some new ones up for the LS style, and they look mint and brand new, super nice. These are AC Delco, I believe, AC Delco gold plugs or wires. So essentially you get some electric grease on there, fit it in there, boom. I'm not going to do it right now, but you know, I'm just going to mock it up real quick. But that's essentially how it's going to look, just sitting like that. So real clean. So I'm going to do that probably next. I'm probably going to wrap the wiring harnesses up with some loom so they look good, and or some tape so they look good, and then bolt them on here, do some dielectric grease on the bottoms of these. And the plugs, I'm going to torque the plugs down and plug them all in after I bolted up and got it mounted together. And yeah, that's kind of going to be really kind of that. A couple little things I got to do still is I got to the same thing for the thermostat. I got an M6 on there right now, so I'll have stainless steel on that. I got to get thermostat. I'm just going to go with a 160. I heard issues with the 180. Thermostat's failing a lot, so I'm just do a regular 160. I'm probably going to, on the oil cooler, I'm going to do potentially some Red gasket maker on there, same thing. M6 bolts. I'm going to put those in and torque them down. I do have a gasket on that right now, so I need a gasket and the thermostat for that. Torque that down, get that done. I might do some red gasket maker on that just because I do not want that thing to leak, and they always leak no matter what you do. And then put some M6 bolts in that. Finish that stuff up. Cut this bolt in half so it fits in there properly. I just torqued the water pump down. It's just 10 foot-pounds. That's plenty. It's supposed to be 11, I believe. I did 10. It'll be fine. Those are torqued down. This is all torqued down. I gotta do this side still. And that'll basically be the engine, man. I mean, that's essentially that. I know I didn't film every single second of this on this last video. It was just tough. I mean, this probably took me 8 months just going back and forth and planning this out, planning that out, taking stuff off, putting stuff on. I've took these things off 10 times to check, make sure that they worked with the belt. It's not straightforward. You run into a bunch of stuff, and when you really want to do it right as much as you can and not mess something up or miss something, and I'm trying to overbuild it and make sure everything is as secure as possible and is not going to come loose or wobble off or not line up or catastrophic failure. For never doing this before, I still think it's a stretch. I mean, I hope to God when I plug this thing in, put it in the car, that it turns on and fires up and sounds good and has no issues. But the reality is my first time doing this, anything even close to this, so it's a big risk. The internals, bearing clearances, I try to check everything as much as I could, piston ring orientation. If I did it again, I would not touch the bottom end at all. I would have left it as is. When I saw what the rings looked like, how good it looked, how good the bearings looked, be frank with you, probably would have just left it and just did all the other stuff, the cam and all what you see here. But it is what it is. If it works and it runs, then hey, we got a brand spanking new engine that's ready to roar. It's going to lope at stop signs and be loud and fun. And down the road we'll do the intake gasket. I might swap this out, and do a shaved intake and all that stuff. I'm just trying to keep this as stock as possible, being how much I've already changed. And I don't want to spend another $1,100 on doing all this intake stuff and not even knowing if the actual engine's going to work. So once it fires up down the road, we may do that. We may keep it stock because, to be honest with you, I just love the look of the intake. I know it's small. I know it chokes it off, and it's the bottleneck of the engine on these engines. But, just having something so clean like this, be repainted, restored fully, pretty much every bolt, every nut, every single thing, like, it almost kind of looks cool that it's stock. It really preserves it in a way that's kind of like a show car a little bit. So, maybe the next build, if we're going to do all that, we'll do the intake. Maybe this one will always just be stock with a kind of aggressive cam and just be a fun daily driver and Sunday driver. Nothing that's going to beat many people, but it'll be loud and fun, have the sunroof open, and just having a good time knowing that you built it. For me, that's worth the price of admission to me. So, I did polish the aluminum rails here too, so I polished those with some aluminum polish. So these are all torqued down. This is all torqued down. So yeah, man, that's it. I don't know what the next video is going to be. I might shoot another quick one, overview of a couple things, but for the most part, it's just buttoning up the little stuff. The bulk of the work is done in terms of this. It's going to be quite a while before I get another video out. It might be this might be the end of the series in terms of the DOD delete videos, and we may do something more when we get the transmission, a transmission figured out, whether we get one rebuilt or we get a decent used one or something. Probably going to drop the subframe out of the car, butt this up to a transmission, got the flywheel, the motor mounts, the brackets, put the tranny and the engine together, mount it on the subframe in here, and then start building off of that. So, running the new power steering lines, the rack and pinion, you can, swap out on the subframe and have that all sitting there and hook all the lines up and have that whole system pretty much figured out and hooked up, sitting right here on the floor. Maybe some of the wiring, maybe we take the whole wiring harness out of the car and start building all that on the subframe and just plug the wiring harness in when we put it back up from underneath. Yeah, stuff like that. So I'm thinking that's probably what I'm going to do. We can do all the manifolds too, but I'm not going to lie to you. This is going to be my last video for probably about a year. Yeah, so, because I got
I got a lot going on and got to be able to afford a transmission. That's definitely not going to at least come till next year. So, you know, I'm hoping next spring or summer we'll butt it up, get that done on the subframe, and then maybe the fall we'll actually try to install it in the car. And that'll be the big, you know, the big fall 2026 event for me, is just actually turning the key on this thing and going through some prerequisite stuff and getting a tuner on it and things like that before I start it. So, but yeah, man, hope you guys learned something. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. If not, at least you kind of just learned some of the ins and outs of these a little bit and kind of some of the theory behind them. Kind of seeing one with a lot of detail put into it and restoration. And that's the thing. It's not even just about rebuilding it. It's really about restoring it. That's what I've kind of come to realize, is that I'm kind of restoring this more than I'm even just rebuilding it. You know, I hope this will be a classic car someday. It is to a lot of guys that like these LS4s. They're quirky cars. They're fun. They're a bit odd, and that's what I love about them. I like that everything is kind of just strange and weird, and you know, it's basically a 5.3, but the bolt-ons are kind of odd and quirky because it's got to fit into a front-wheel drive car. I love that about this engine. That's what I think is so cool about it. And to have one fully restored like this, looking in this condition as an engine, it's pretty rare. You're probably not going to see something that has this much detail in an LS4 many places. In fact, I'd say this is maybe one of the most detailed engine builds in an LS4 that I've seen, although there is some nice ones out there. So, you know, it's a labor of love. It's a restoration project. You know, I'm really praying to God that it turns over and runs and doesn't throw a bearing or spin a bearing or throw her out through the bottom end or lock up, or the many, many things that could absolutely go wrong if I, as a first-time builder, did anything slightly incorrect on this. We're crossing our fingers. We're going to leave it here for probably the winter time. You know, the rest of this summer, into the fall and winter. Might do some little things here and there. Maybe take the wiring harness out and relume it in the house or something like that and get it ready. But honestly, it's going to be a little while before we have money for a transmission and we can butt it up and do anything further. But there you go. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. This will more than likely end the actual DOD delete kind of little series on it. But we will pick it up when we actually put it together and, you know, film that next big process of the build to get this thing back in the car on its way. So, thank you guys. Peace.